So when Antifa was making noise, a couple years ago or so, calling people on the right in the United States fascists and Nazis, right? And there was a grain of truth to that because it's a spectrum, right? So there still are definitely some people on the right who you could say are that, right? In my comment section, sometimes people will defend Hitler, say he did nothing wrong, how right he was, how he just wanted the best for his people, how, you know, there's nothing wrong with being racist, it's race realism, yada, 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 it's the truth, so on and so forth, right? I mean, these things happen. We've all seen them, right? I'm not making any value judgments, I'm just presenting objective reality, right? And it seems like now I'm not gonna say it's the exact same people because people change their YouTube handles and or their avatars, so on and so forth. So who knows, right? Uh, but broadly speaking, the political right now, right, in the so-called political right in the United, you're all commies, right? Whether you're on the right or you're on the left, commie, Nazi, fascist, the political spectrum is all wrong, right? The right should be pro-freedom and the left should be anti-freedom. That's the only political spectrum that makes sense. I've talked about this forever, right? But because of how whack the political spectrum is, um, how poorly, and I think it's done on purpose, how poor it is, it doesn't make any sense, right? Um, and this is, everyone's anti-freedom. It would seem, right? Maybe not the moderates, right? Maybe the centrists are somewhat pro-freedom, but there's no there's really no room for uh, extremists when it comes to pro-freedom. Uh, I'm generalizing, but everybody seems to be pro-authoritarianism, right? I mean, they'll complain about how U.S. is authoritarian, and then they'll support Russia, which is even more authoritarian, right? They'll they'll cry about this or that, dictator, and then they'll call the American president a dictator. So it's like there's no standards, right? There's no values. You just play for a certain team. You've been divided and conquered, basically, right? So now you have uh, the same people who, and I'm not saying that they're Nazis or anything like that. I'm not saying that Antifa was right in characterizing these people, but they threw you in the same bag, if you will, as some of the more extreme people on the right, the race realists. And in some cases, they were correct, right? And they call all of you Nazis, right? And fascists. Just to have all of you fucking clowns turn around and do the same to the Ukrainian people right now, right? You cried and bitched and moaned and complained so much about that, right? And now you're doing the exact same fucking thing. You're incoherent, right? This is why you're all leftists, right? A lot of people on the political right, because it's convenient today, became Antifa. Like, how is this not apparently or not obviously apparent to everybody? And again, I'm generalizing, right? Everyone isn't like this. But the people who had a problem with the political right in the United States being all characterized as fascist and so on and so forth, right? Simply by supporting Trump. Now, now we're saying that people who are defending their nation, right, their country in Ukraine are Nazis, right? People who support nationalism when it's convenient, right? Who are pro their race or nation or whatever, right? All of a sudden they're saying that it's not okay for Ukrainians to be so, and we need to kill them for that, right? Or Russia did the right thing by invading them, right? Russia, who has been where the same sort of sentiments have been brewing, right? There's Nazis everywhere, right? These people. I mean, you could go watch this documentary, right? I I mentioned this in one video a long time ago, and somebody came around and said, "What? There's Nazis in Poland? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's Nazis everywhere. There's these kids who believe that are just like this guy here, right?"
But he's no street drifter. He's studying architecture. Tesak says he chose the course because it's what Hitler studied.
Скинхедов называют нацистами, фашистами, но на самом деле мы расисты. Расизм – это любовь к своей расе. Ни больше, ни меньше.
Right? Like these people exist everywhere, right? It, this is the flavor of the day for a lot of people, and a lot of this is caused by, forced immigration or people from other countries moving to where you live and committing crime, you know what I mean? And with economies failing, people looking for scapegoats and being programmed by certain forces in society to do this, right? Youth is being radicalized all over the place, and this is the world we live in, and it's always been so, right? So, like, you're not making any sense. You're so illogical, you're so irrational, you're so incoherent. Those of you that do these things, right? On the one hand, you rebel against this idea that everybody who thinks a little bit like you it's not okay to call them, Nazis or whatever. Antifa's crazy. And on the other hand, you become Antifa and you do the same thing to all of Ukraine. Yeah, of course there's Nazis in Ukraine. Like, how do you get, it's one of the ways of motivating people to go to army and help you attain your political goals as a political leader, right? It's radicalizing the youth and motivating them. And this is mostly just young, dumb people who just don't understand what's going on, right? Young, dumb people who just can't think for themselves, right? They're not very rational. They're not very logical. They're just emotional, right? The proof is in the pudding. I know I say you, right? That doesn't mean I'm talking to you specifically, right? If it doesn't apply to you, then I ain't talking to you, right? But you motherfuckers out there, those of you that do this, you're fucking incoherent. You don't make any sense. And you're coming around here trying to make arguments. You're just getting emotional. I'm still waiting for an argument to the things that I say are true. I'm still waiting for an argument. You don't have any. What I get generally is I want, right? Nobody gives a fuck what you want. Like, welcome to the real world. Nobody gives a fuck what you want. Sorry. Anyway, check this out.
Vastly more important in democratic societies.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it.
A lot of youth in the West today, they don't know they're communists. And look, that's not exactly what I'm saying, but you'll get the point in just a second, right?
If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist.
Right, so you have people out there spewing Fox News propaganda, right? Now, I'm not saying, look, communism, fascism, race realism, a lot of these ideologies are created for public consumption, right? It's in order to convince people to do the political bidding of people to whom, I'm not trying to discount ideology at all, but I think once you get to a certain level, the people that are, the shadow government, if you will, the people that are in charge, their goals are profit, control, power, right? And they use these ideologies to convince people to do their bidding, basically. And I'm not saying that they don't themselves believe in some of this stuff some of the time, because that also does happen, right? It's But for people who have um, the building of an empire in mind, right? Their ideology tends to be geopolitics, right? How geography influences man, broadly speaking, and you know how to grow an empire, how to be an empire, and yada yada yada, right? So, insofar as me calling the people on the right commies, right now, it's not really about the specifics of the communist ideology. It's really more about um, the enemy of the United States, right? And United States also used the people in the states, the powers that be, used communism to brainwash you as something to rebel against, right? Oh, commies evil, yada yada yada, right? Um, I've expressed my views on socialism before, right? And capitalism. So if you watch my videos, you know where I stand, right? I'm not telling you what I'm pro or against in this video necessarily. But yeah, so when I say commies right now, right, what I'm basically talking about is, well, just leftists in general. Um, but more specifically, people who spew Russian propaganda, right? People want to draw this like huge distinction between Russia and USSR, and ideologically, right, at least um, officially, well, Russia is not even supposed to have an ideology right now. Of course they do. I mean, it's obvious that they do, but they're not supposed to, right? And they're not communist like back in the day, right? But Russia's making the same moves it always has as an empire. And the ideology just changes because times change, and you need to brainwash people into this or that, or some people that come into power actually believe these things. It's complicated, it's complex, I get it, right? So when I say commies, I'm oversimplifying. What I merely mean is Russian shills, Russian bots, Putin stooges, people in the West, right, who are pro-Russia, who are convinced by whatever the ideology of the day is now, right? It's more of a Nazi ideology or no racist ideology. It's more of a holy war ideology. I don't know what it is exactly, what to call it exactly. I feel like I know what it is, but it's something that's very similar to what Hitler was doing, right? It's we're victims, right? We've been wronged by history. There's all these people and forces who want to bring us down, and we're being attacked, right? We need to defend ourselves. Uh, this is an existential struggle, right? It was an existential struggle for Germany and the white man before World War II. You know, they were wronged by history and these evil powers, and it's very, very similar to what's happening in Russia right now, right? So, um, yeah. Anyway, let's continue.
If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or
Right, down with the imperialists. Right, that was the rhetoric that USSR used, while itself being an empire. Right, this is also why so many people out there are fucking incoherent. They just repeat slogans. They just yell shit that sounds good to them, not realizing how they're contradicting themselves. Right, USSR was an empire. Russia is an empire of sorts. US, the collective West, whatever you want to call it, yeah, they're all empires, right? So it's rich for communist propaganda to use these slogans, right? Down with imperialists. They're all the same, man. And obviously I'm exaggerating again, but like when it comes down to it, this is what it is. It's imperialism, and ideology is, for the most part, it's for dumb people.
organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking
Right? There's so many people in the West who attack the United States and support Russia, right? Back in those days, you would have been considered a commie. You would have been uh, a lot of people with the things that they do today. Had U.S. not been taken over to a large degree, right, infiltrated to a large degree by communists, right, would have been tried for treason. There's people on YouTube right now saying things, getting money from uh, pro-Russian websites, or Russian government, right? Like Scott Ritter. I mean, I don't have any proof. This is just my opinion, right? There's other people here in YouTube who are by this channel or another channel getting money, financial support from Russia, right? Pushing Russian propaganda in order to bring down the United States, right? People who are talking about creating like the breakup of the United States, right? This whole taken to the extreme, right? Christian conservatism, wanting to create like a Christian nation within the nation. You know what I mean? Wanting to create a white ethno state or a black ethno state. All these are commie ideas, right? So all the way on the so-called left, you have like, Malcolm X and maybe Martin Luther King and whoever has followed in their footsteps, right? And all the way on the so-called right side, you'll have Richard Spencer and people like that, right? But ultimately, they're one and the same. They want to break up the whether they know it or not, they want to break up the United States, create an ethno state of sorts, right? But supposedly, one is on the left and one is on the right, right? They're all commies.
Attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist.
Right? Attacking the foreign policy of the United States. You guys are commies. Now, I'm not saying you're morally wrong or right? But if you're incoherent, well, which is it?
If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist. But there are other communists who don't show their real faces, who work more silently.
By the early 19...
Right. And I didn't see this documentary, but they probably go into talking about communist Russian agents embedded in the United States in the universities, positions of power, and also sleeper cells in the United States, right? Which leads me to my next point. The United States is divided ideologically, right? It seems like a large portion of the U.S. is just pro-Russia and anti the country that they live in, right? Which is weird because people on the right proclaim themselves as rational, right? But you support the very force that wants to destroy you. Now, that doesn't mean that you're morally correct if you do support the United States, right? But I think the morally correct stance would be to fix what's going on in the United States and make America a righteous nation again, right? Or if it ever, I don't know that it ever was, but try to move in that direction, right? Make it a force for good in the world, right? So if you have a problem with the dwindling U.S. manufacturing base, open up a fucking factory. If you have a problem with United States not providing all of its own food and having to import shit, well, stop buying imported food and start growing fucking food. You know, like, just whining about shit is not going to do anything, right? Anyway, you're supposed to be so rational, right? People on the right, when you're completely fucking incoherent. And I'm not saying everybody, right? Obviously, I'm not saying that, so don't get me wrong. And if I had to choose a side, I wouldn't. But my views are more aligned with, which is why you guys are here, right? More aligned with the political right in the United States, right? Those are my views. I'm more akin to that than what you call these leftists. But at the end of the day, right, in my own little way, and whether it's effective or not, whatever, criticize me as much as you want. Who gives a shit? But if you haven't noticed, I'm trying to reform the right because I identify more with that side. But at the same time, I see how it's really leftist to the core, right? So that's why I talk about that. Because clowning leftists, which so many people have made so much money in YouTube by doing, right, is cherry picking. it's low hanging fruit, and you're really just promoting leftism, which may be a topic for another video. But you have a whole bunch of people in the West who are anti-West, right? Commies. They don't like the government. They idolize Russia. Some of them are starting to lean, you know, and like China even. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you? But they're, they're like, they seem to be yearning for that sort of authoritarianism because, then they won't have to deal with gay pride parades. You know what I mean? Like, just take everybody's freedom away, right? If I can have freedom, nobody can, basically, right? Or if I can have my way, right? If I can get exactly what I want, then nobody can be free, right? Put everybody in prison for everything. Fucking retards. It is what it is, right? Get over it. Where's the arguments? I'm not getting any arguments. But yeah, I'm getting to the point, right? I'm getting to the point. In a country where so many people are anti their own government, they're anti, I don't know that U.S. necessarily has a state ideology, but they're anti-West, anti-America, and yet they live in that country, right? This is just regular people who have been brainwashed by various forces that I've talked about that are in these sort of propaganda videos from the 50s and the 60s, right? If let's say half the nation is commie leaning, maybe I'm exaggerating, but a ton of people in the United States are pro-Russia, or in some, at least to a degree, right? A country that wants to destroy the United States, right? If that's half the motherfucking country, right? How difficult would it be, right, to convince some of these people to, I don't know, blow up factories, derail trains, and do this and that? I mean, we just had a bunch of people in Russia shooting up military recruiting places because they disagree with the war, right? Blowing up some helicopters at an airport, airbase somewhere in Russia, right? Bridges are exploding in Russia with Russians driving trucks, right? Over these bridges. Like, you're at war, right? In a country where half the people hate the government, disagree with the government, they're pro their mortal enemy, right? How difficult would it be to convince some of these people to blow shit up here and there? And who brainwashed these people in the first place, right? Well, commies that came into the United States from outside and infiltrated governments, blah, 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 all this other shit, right? It's interesting to me how the people on the right, and somehow they stopped doing this now, right? But they'll talk about, inside jobs. 9/11 was an inside job. United States has been taken over and infiltrated, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well then why aren't you fighting it? Why aren't you doing something about it, right? Why are you supporting your mortal enemy that has done that in the first place, infiltrated you, and done these things to you? I mean, how... Anyway. Right? So, look, I am not saying that the things that have been happening in Ohio, and it's very, very, very sad to see what's been happening, and it seems... I don't blame people, and I allow the possibility of this, but it just seems coordinated, right? You had some balloons coming in from China, supposedly, not that long ago. Now Biden is in Ukraine, Poland, EU, giving speeches, organizing a war effort against Russia, so on and so forth. And in his absence, there's all these strange things happening in Ohio now, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is the work of sleeper cells, right? Commie sleeper cells in the United States. And I'm not even saying that this is some homegrown, terrorism. of people who just hate their government. You know, like the Weather Underground, things of that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, well, could it be? And if not this specific instance, I mean, U.S. is at war with commies, with half of U.S. supporting commies. You think some things might blow up in the United States? You think there might be some upheaval in the United States, right? But this is the flavor of the day, right? I, again, I'm not saying that these could very well have been accidents, but it's just you have to start thinking in these terms because, well, this is just what happens, right? You're at war. And you have half the people in the United States who want to, or in some way support people who want to destroy the United States. So what do you think is going to happen? Like, this shouldn't be rocket science, right? A couple more things before I go. Gonna read some comments from my last video. So Lee Sean Sullivan has principals. Okay. He doesn't want to. So he's pro-Russia, right? He doesn't want to. I'm gonna say Lee Sean Sullivan is British, probably Irish. He doesn't want to arm Nazis. He wants to give east of Ukraine to Russia to punish them for. So he's Antifa, right? He's right-wing Antifa. Lefty. He's a lefty. Of course he is. And he just spews all this trash, all this garbage. None of it makes any sense. He's quoting Sun Tzu, like just all over the place, right? And then this is just gold. So he's saying, did he erase the comment? I guess he did. He erased this comment. Oh. So, this is so weak, dude. Why'd you do that? See, this is... I'm not even wasting any more time on you clowns. You guys are fucking clowns. You erased your comment. Anyway, the comment was that, well, he's pro-Russia because he doesn't want Russians and Ukrainians dying. At the end of the day, after all this drivel, all this bullshit, that was his conclusion. I am pro-Russia because I don't want Russians and Ukrainians dying, right? I mean, do I even need to address that, right? Do I guess, you know, seeing as Chechnya, tiny little Chechnya attacked the great nuclear power USSR, right? Russia, Russian Federation, and then tiny little Georgia attacked the nuclear power Russia, right? Ukraine attacked the nuclear power Russia. Poor little Russia, you know, they had to defend themselves, right? Right now, tiny little Moldova with what, like 1 million people or something, that has been forever, whether wholly or in part occupied by Russia, USSR, or whatever. Tiny little Moldova, now that Russia is weak, right? It is growing some balls and is looking to attack and take over Russia. So Russia's going to have to defend themselves from tiny little Moldova, right? Right? He's against people dying, which is why he's pro-Russia, right? I mean, you know, that just proving my point, exactly what I've been talking about. And then just spewing all this dumb shit about NATO moving west, and it's all nonsense. It's nonsense. It's lies. It's Russian propaganda, right? NATO refused Ukraine membership, right? To placate to Russia. Like, this is well known. Well, was this considered? Yeah. But they refused. Why? Because they didn't want beef with Russia. They thought that would pacify Russia. And they were more... The West is an empire, don't get me wrong. But their soft power is is so powerful, alluring. I mean, everybody wants luxury. Everybody wants nice shit. They don't have to fight Russia on the battlefield. They'll do it and they'll crush Russia if they want to, but they don't have to do that, right? Because their soft power is so convincing. And that is the so-called existential threat to Russia. The Russians are going to see what the success and the wealth of the people living in former Russian republics. And to have Ukraine, which has such connection to Russia, to have Ukraine, everybody in Ukraine get iPhones, import 10-year-old BMWs and Mercedes Benzes from Germany and just live high on the hog, right? For Russians to see that being so intimately connected to Ukraine, so many of them living in Ukraine, right? If people in Russia see that, they're going to want that. They're going to rise up against Putin and whoever else is in power. They're going to overthrow them. They're going to stage another color or whatever the fuck you want to call it, revolution. That's how effective these things are. Because the West, at the very least, however evil you think it is, and I don't disagree necessarily, affords the people a certain standard of living that Russia has failed to deliver. This is not fucking rocket science, right? Anyway, so NATO wasn't moving west. Ukraine was begging to be part of NATO and begging to be part of EU because that's what the Ukrainian people wanted, by and large. So what Russia had to do is sponsor separatist groups, just the way they did in Georgia, just the way they did in Ukraine, or just the way they're doing in Moldova right now, right? They sponsor these separatist groups. They put Russian military to train them, and they do this, right, in order to then have an excuse to invade. No. It's these little countries that are standing up to, and right, victimizing poor little like you gotta be retarded to believe. And straight up, you gotta be retarded to believe this shit. Anyway, but going back to Ohio, this is where people. This is that sort of sentiment where people, I think, miss the point and misdiagnose what's happening, right? I can't. The phone's not cooperating with me right now. Here we go. But anyway, somebody left a comment that, our government wants to kill us, this is what's happening, why this is what's happening in Ohio, blah, 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 blah. Look, that's an oversimplification. Are there certain forces in your government that want to do this? Are there certain people, shadow government, whatever the hell you want to call it, people that are pulling the strings and influencing your government that want to depopulate the planet? Yeah. That doesn't mean your entire government. It's a struggle, right? You still have a two-party system, right? Everybody's not on board with everything, right? That's why you have some states mandating the vax and calling you, and then you have other states saying fuck no. Everybody's not in complete agreement on everything on the agenda. If they were, you wouldn't be able to we wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now. So it's an oversimplification to say, our government wants to kill us, but it's this sort of sentiment, right, that turns people against their own government and makes you apolitical. And instead of getting involved, it just makes you a whiner, someone who misdiagnoses the situation and just gives up, throws their hands up in the air and gives up because it's all lost because my government wants to kill you. If your government, everybody in your government wanted to kill you, you wouldn't be alive talking to me right now. But this shouldn't be rocket science, right? Clearly there's somebody stopping them from doing that. And who is that? Well, and I'm not saying it's people who love you, but it's, imperialists who want United States to regain its role as a global hegemon, right? Those are the people that want to fight Russia and you're going to benefit from that, right? So the more powerful Russia gets, the worse your life is going to get in the United States. This is the sad reality of things, right? The more powerful, the more U.S. kicks Russia's ass, the better your life will become in the United States, right? The more powerful U.S. becomes, right? They're able to, and this isn't fucking rocket science, really. The more they're able to control global trade, right? Because they have military bases on all these islands, on all these seas, and they get to impose embargoes and tell people what they can sell to whom in what currency and for how much, usually dollars, right? They get to impose their rules on global trade, meaning you're gonna make the most money, you're gonna remain most powerful, your life is gonna get better. This is this is the fucked up world that we live in. So you saying, oh, fuck the United States, the government wants to kill me, yada yada yada. Our standard of living has fallen so much in the last however many years because that's what the government wants, you know. So we need to destroy this government and da da da. We need a revolution and we need to support Russia to do. Like, you think that's gonna make your life better? Yes, there are some people in the United States that want to bring it down, right? Bringing the United States down, right? Diminishing its role as a global hegemon, right, is going to destroy your currency, which will destroy your standard of living. It's going to destroy your economy, which is propped up, for better or for worse, propped up by the, amongst other things, military-industrial complex and the fact that they control global trade, right? Things of that nature, right? So the people, and I'm not saying they're doing it for you, but the people who want to maintain U.S. hegemony, right? If your standard of living is important to you, and your ability to, you know, to be able to live high on the hog, if you will, to live well is important to you, then those people have the same goals in mind, right? Because the better your life, right, the better quality of life they could provide you, the better able they're going to be to convince you to go fight for the United States in all these fucking wars so that you can maintain this standard of living and they can remain in power, and you're going to benefit off that. Because if daddy got a whole bunch of money, some of that shit is going to trickle down to you too. And if and if somebody else's daddy who wants to kill your daddy is able to do that, right, that's going to make your life better or worse, right? So that this is the fucking incoherence of you nincompoops out there. And this is what you are. I am sorry. Somebody has to tell you this. Now, I'm not saying this is morally wrong, or right or wrong. I'm not saying this is correct. I'm just telling you how it is, what it is. And like these basic fucking truths seem to be, because you're so goddamn brainwashed by propaganda and nonsense, seem to be just rocket science to you. Now, look, if you want to be a martyr, right, because morality and shit, okay, but you don't. Because at least the way I see it, what motivates you to hate your own government is the fact that your ancestors or even your, you know, grandparents lived far better than you did, and your standard of living has dropped for the reasons I just described, because US has been losing its power in the world. That's why your standard of living has been dropping. But that is motivating you to, this is the vicious cycle, right? That's motivating you to hate your government and support the forces that want to bring down your government and make your life even worse. Do you see how counterproductive, self-destructive, nihilistic, and incoherent and retarded that shit is? This is just, again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I told you what I believe should happen, right? But this is how fucking dumb you people are, who are motivated by, you know, the inflation and destruction of our currency. The more power the United States gains in the world, right, the more they're able to impose the dollar on these various people, right? The larger, in effect, its economy will grow, and it needs to print more money to keep that economy going, right? But they've been printing more money than they've been able to spread all over the world. So that's why you've had inflation, one of the reasons. I'm greatly oversimplifying. I'm no economist, right? But the less people, you just think it's them printing the dollar that's destroying the dollar. It's not just that. It's the fact that economies all over the world are refusing the dollar. And why are they refusing the dollar? Well, because there's no political will in the United States to enforce the dollar onto them, right? That's, in a sense, a deflationary tactic, right? The money supply is is grand, it's big, it's growing, but the economy is shrinking. The U.S. global economy, or U.S.'s influence over the global economy is shrinking, which is what you're pushing for at the same time, right? I don't know. Can I get an argument? Like, I'd like to be wrong. I sometimes feel like I would like to be wrong about this, or maybe you could correct me on some things, and I could be more correct, if that makes any sense, right? But I don't get any arguments from anybody. All I get is this fucking nonsense drivel that we should give to Russia what they want, because if we don't, they're gonna kill more people, right? So if somebody threatens to kill you, right? You're gonna give them whatever they want. You're not gonna fight back. Like, who believes this? You don't actually believe this. This isn't actually something you believe, right? You're just being dishonest, demoralized, whatever, right? This fucking clown, because that's who you are, and that's why you erased your comment, right? You don't want Russians and Ukrainians dying, right? So you blame the West for it, not Russia, who started the war and started the killing in the Donbass. Yes, started the war in the Donbass by backing Russian separatists, a minority, arming them and having them violently take over the government, right? And then Ukraine should have just let them do that, right? And then Poland, right? The Baltic states, Poland, and then Germany, France, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, United States, right? Australia. We're just going to go full circle, because Russia will, if we don't give Russia what they want, they're going to kill people. And I'm against killing people, so let's just give Russia what they want. Wonderful worldview you have there, right? You're blaming the West for the killing that Russia is doing. It's the West's fault. Russia is killing people. You don't want people dying, so it's the West's fault because Russia is killing people. I mean, can you be any more incoherent? And if, again, the worldview is that might is right, right? We submit to the whims of the most powerful, right? Because Ukraine is so much less powerful than Russia, and if they don't just submit, they're gonna die. Russians are gonna die. Well, then shouldn't everybody submit to U.S. hegemony? If that's the worldview, you're fucking incoherent. You don't make any sense. I'm fucking sick and tired of this shit. The shit that's happening in Ohio, I have no clue what it is. What it is that's happening, I don't know. I am just saying it's fair, reasonable to consider the possibilities that I am considering, right? It's happening all over the world. Bridges, pipelines, factories, airports, shit's just blowing up all over the fucking world, right? Why? World War III. Thanks for watching.